this type of activity by the chief law enforcement officer in the state of Michigan, but it gets worse. The Michigan Attorney General threatened legislators with whom she disagreed with criminal prosecution. She tweeted it out and gave an interview that those legislators who might not agree with certifying the election could be investigated criminally by the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Michigan. Folks, that's totalitarianism. That is thuggery. It is stunning that America hasn't risen up with a uniform voice and state that when the state threatens people who are elected to be the voice of the people with criminal prosecution if they speak on the people's behalf, should be arrested. That's not the United States of America. Michigan is under siege. And it gets worse. In Michigan, the electors met on December 14th at the Capitol building as required by law. The governor and others said that COVID restrictions prevented people from being present, but it's interesting how COVID only blocked Republicans from entering the Capitol on that day. Democrats entered. They selected their electors on the Senate floor. Republicans were barred at the door. But if you believe that COVID was the reason, let me show you that it really wasn't, because again, this is an admission. Governor Whitmer later said it wasn't COVID. We can go to the next slide. She claimed, no, back one. It was a security threat. She first claimed COVID, but then later it was a security threat. And she gave an interview to NPR on that security threat. Interesting, what security threat would allow Democrats in the building and Republicans not to go in the building? I'm uncertain. But this is what happened. That is Ian Northam, an attorney in Michigan. He's surrounded by Republican legislators and electors who are being blocked by one of the 200 police officers that Governor of Michigan, Governor Whitmer, mobilized to prevent them from coming in that building. The People's House was shuttered. It was closed. Governors don't dissolve parliaments or legislatures. Kings and queens do. That's not America. That's not the process. But later we learned, and we thank the Michigan police by revealing this truth. Afterwards, they say they're not aware of any threat that was given. That there was no credible threat. There was no basis for COVID. This was just a power grab that used the force of the state and the police power of the state to prevent Republicans from gathering on a day when they have the constitutional duty to review the election and to certify it, so that only a select group of people were allowed in those hallowed halls. Folks, that chamber is not Governor Whitmer's chamber. It is the people's chamber. And that Capitol should be open to the people of the state of Michigan. This is frightening. And I hope people start to wake up to this. We got involved in the Amistad project almost 2 years ago, at concerns with election integrity, originally as it relates to the digital vulnerabilities of our elections. And we'll speak briefly about that a little bit later. But we started to see things change as we moved into the COVID concerns in the spring of 2020. And we saw governors starting to proclaim themselves to be not a part of the lawmaking process, but to be the law. And they said that they were exercising these emergency police powers for our benefit. Now, these powers, which are extraordinary, are only to be exercised at a time when democracy cannot function. When the legislature is in a bunker, or they're hiding, or they've been decimated by foreign attack. When democracy can function, we don't have a constitution that supports governors saying, I do not have faith in democracy. I'm not going to propose bills. I'm not going to have a public hearing. I'm not going to have debates about whether this is good for America. I'm going to dictate it. And what I believe that we're missing is that these dictates cover every aspect of human life. They cover whether you can be 5'11" away from a person or 6'1". They cover whether you can attend a funeral, whether you can attend a wedding, whether you can have friends over for the holidays, whether you can visit a loved one who is dying. And when you pass laws that impact every aspect of human life, those laws are unenforceable. There's no police force large enough to enforce those laws. So what happens? They're only enforced against those who raise their voice against the government. And that's what you see happening in America today. Health, or workout areas where somebody says the government's racist, suddenly they get raided. A barber in Michigan who says, wait a minute, I disagree with this, they get raided. You see government not only playing favorites in elections, playing favorites in who has economic vitality and whose business is going to be crushed. Big box stores are open, while church facilities of the same size cannot open. You have arbitrary enforcement. We got involved because Governor Whitmer herself threatened a group of black urban pastors with jail if they met to speak against cancel culture. We represented that group called One Nation. She continued to threaten them with jail if they met or if they marched, while she marched with Black Lives Matters. We see this example all across the nation, and it violates a basic tenet of American law that all citizens have value and all citizens are to be treated equally, and all voices have value in the American debate. We're trending the wrong direction out of fear. Fear has allowed them cover to become petty tyrants within their state. As we move through that process, we started to see the impact on elections as emergency orders started to change the election process. This is the report prepared by Stillwater. And it shows the flow of private monies on the top tier from leftist organizations through 8 private 501c3s, as well as 2 quasi-public private entities, demonstrating how they became the shadow government that managed the elections in the urban core. It was Mr. Zuckerberg and his money, the Democracy Fund, the Tides Foundation and the 1630 Fund, Arabella Investors and the New Venture Fund, Stoll Foundation, Mr. Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan and the Knight Foundation that we've discovered thus far that flowed these monies in for this purpose. These monies dictated everything from how to run the election, to actually designing the ballot, designing the software for the poll books, encryption services for government. There's been a lot of discussion of hacking into our system. We were not hacked from without. We were hacked from within. ERIC, which is one of these organizations on the far left of the chart. They are an organization with various members that's a quasi-public private entity that does our cybersecurity standards for elections. Next to that is the CSMR, the Center for Secure and Modern Elections. CSME, I'm sorry. They are working to get easy registration changes at the United States Post Office, so that when you change your address, you are automatically changed in registration. But has anybody checked how easy it is to fill out a change of address form at the United States Post Office? It undermines the integrity and the verification of the identity of the person who is registering to vote. CEIR, the Center for Election Innovation and Research. Center for Election Innovation and Research received $50 million that we know of from Mark Zuckerberg. They authored the Pennsylvania voter registration system called SURE. And we have identified that alterations of that system occurred after the election, during a time when election challenges were being forwarded. The books were being cleaned up. $50 million to CEIR. They have, as you see on the sheet, they have access to driver's license information and are promoting an interface and sharing of driver's license information. They've teamed up with Democracy Works, who we believe, we haven't confirmed yet, has a contract with the United States Postal Service for complaints as it relates to the failure to receive ballots. That complaint information is valuable political information, and it's being shared with a select group of outsiders who then can share that information politically. The Center for Tech and Civic Life. This is what we're going to drill down on today. The Center for Tech and Civic Life. You will see the name Tiana Epps Johnson. She is all through this. Tiana Epps Johnson is also a member, or has been a member of some of these other groups, and heads up the Center for Tech and Civic Life. National Vote at Home Institute. You will see Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State of Michigan, is a part of the National Vote at Home Institute. They support vote by mail and home voting, which requires each individual voter to have the technology to print their own ballots.